Simon is a distinguished journalist, sports, one area of writing, sports journalist, but also a nature journalist and particular interest in birds. I read him regularly in his pieces in the Sunday Times, though I haven't found the one in this week's Sunday Times. I can't find it.
Oh, it's there, all right.
Yeah. I've gone through page after page of it, but the really interesting things. One that really struck me was one heading recently, rewilding, and I thought, God, this is going to be George Monbiot and sort of wolves and so on. And it was about moths, all those moths, micro moths that used to swarm over our windscreens when we were younger and sort of splattered them completely. Where have they all gone? Good question, actually. Interesting ones on beavers, on seals and so on. So great to see them. But now there's told me more than 20 books. We've got Simon's latest book there. So I hope you take an interest. I bought my copy. I've got it in quickly. I think your talk's going to be on a view from a lofty place, I talk. So we look forward to it. Thank you very much, Simon, for coming.
I was sitting on the top of a mountain in Armenia when I realised that humans have got it wrong about everything for about the last 5,000 years. Oh, that's a bit long now. We got it wrong about art, we got it wrong about science, we got it wrong about philosophy, we got it wrong in the way we look at the world, we've got it wrong in the way that we live our lives from day to day. This was a rather disconcerting conclusion to reach. I mean, it isn't as if it's a small thing we've got it wrong. We have got it wrong about life, the universe, and everything. Every single thing that we think about these matters is based on a false premise. We have created a million beautiful arguments about life and the world and how it should be dealt with. But it's all based on an assumption that we disprove every single time we have a pee. Lofty thoughts, eh? I mean, mountains do have that kind of effect. You read the Gospels, read Thomas Mann, ask Zeus. But this was really a rather special bit of mountain. I was travelling with the World Land Trust, and we were looking at a chunk of this rather special land that we were hoping to get hold of and manage with the help and support of the local community. Sort of place that started down at the bottom with beautiful streams under a nice tint of leaves with wild rose gardens, sort of place where you long to spend a day in the company of a bottle or two of champagne and a beautiful girl. Well, for me, plants are really kind of the furniture, the wallpaper of the wild world. A nice background for more exciting things, but not here. Really not here. Here there was floral diversity that confounded perceptions, that scrambled the wits, that made you doubt your sense and your senses. It was the sort of area that looked as if a child with his first paint box had painted the landscape and insisted on using every single tube in the box. Here was something that just about everything that ever grew. There were immense rarities, local specialities, half-forgotten relations and ancestors of our own favourite garden plants. Even a few flowers that I almost recognised, along with banks of orchids and clouds and crowds of other stuff, and slopes and dips and rises and hollows of colour and colour and colour. And sometimes the colour took wing and flew. There was a butterfly expert walked these slopes and he found 65 different species of butterfly in a single day. In this country we have a total of 59. So finally we climbed out onto the ridge and looked down over this immensely rich place. Places where Bezoar goat performed crazed feats of mountaineering without even troubling to rope themselves together. Here there are places for bears and wolves, and you can even find sign of the almost impossible Caucasian leopard. There was all the stuff, another flora. Here was all the stuff of limestone pavements, another rich source of colour. None of the plants more than about that high. Now me, I could name only the birds, raven, lamb-guy, chough. But the view here from the world's roof made me prone to these absolutely enormous thoughts. So I sat there, looking down, mark you, at a diamond tail of a lammerguy, and pondering on the way we humans look and have always looked at ourselves and our place in the world. And I remember one of the Alex cartoons. Remember when Alex was a yuppie in the 1980s, and his girlfriend Penny is looking up at the night sky and saying, "Alex, isn't this wonderful? All the stars, millions of stars. Doesn't it make you feel insignificant?" And Alex says, "Well, not particularly, no. I'd like to know how many 25-year-olds there are up there with a brand new BMW." Well, I don't suppose most of us feel like that way. Most of us, I think most of us here today anyway, have a strong feeling of connection with a bigger world, a small part in something absolutely enormous. And this is something we're born with. But the thing is that the forces of life and of society are always trying to take it back away from us. And that was one of the feelings that I understood with such clarity in the clear mountain air of Armenia. How did you get your love of the wild world? I expect plenty of us here tonight have been asked that often enough, but no one has had it asked quite as often as David Attenborough. I mean, he was even asked it by Barack Obama, and he gave the answers he always does. How did you ever lose yours? We live with the idea that love for non-human life is childish. Something that is appropriate to set aside in maturity. Even as a child, you are aware that there's a certain suspicion attached to your love of the wild world. You love birds, and bird spotting, how very nice for you. A child should have a hobby. But you grow out of it soon enough, and it's a useful phase to be going through. I always resented that. I felt that people didn't understand, but I also felt they should understand. And what's more, I felt people would be better if they did understand. If they shared this love, they would perhaps have more fun and more meaning in their lives, and would be able to live better lives as a result. This is not a hobby. This really was something that mattered. So I'm going to read you a chunk now from a book of mine called My Natural History. But before I do this, I would like to point out that this gig I'm doing today is an absolute doddle. Well, at least it is compared to another one that I was asked to do in my capacity as a council member of the World Land Trust. We'd like you to speak last and close the evening. They said, no. I said, no. I'll tell you what, I'll open the show cold, if anything, but I am not going to stand up in front of an audience and explain that wildlife matters, wildlife is wonderful, and that we should do our best to save it. Not if it means following David Attenborough. They were implacable, and so I attempted to make the best of this bad situation. So I thought, the only thing I did say, well, it's hard to follow David Attenborough. But then, thinking it through, I realised that I had spent most of my life following David Attenborough. And what's more, I thought it would be a jolly good idea if everybody else was to do the same sort of thing. So here is an account of how I first began to follow David Attenborough. There was one series in particular. It was a series in 1961, Zoo Quest to Madagascar. I remember the beautiful anxiety as Attenborough hunted for a lemur that had never before been filmed. It was a revelation of the terrible fragility of the wild world. And it was the first time that such an idea had struck me. Indri, the biggest surviving lemur, weighing up to 29 pounds, a teddy-faced jumper with a taste for music, the great singer of the Malagasy forest. Lemurs are primates, like us, one of the earliest forms in which our group took shape. They were outcompeted on mainland Africa by monkeys and apes, like ourselves, but they somehow got to Madagascar after it had separated from the African mainland, and they set about the great adaptive radiation. The name lemur is from the Latin lemures, our spirits of the night. Perhaps it is the haunting song of the Indri that prompted this name. It's a sound I've never heard in person, and it's a stranger din as nature has come up with. The Indri is something of a tree-bound whale. And I revelled in Attenborough's search for the Indri, the elusive, the near lost, the all but unfindable beast, the myth of the Malagasy forest. But he found it, wonder of wonders, he found it, and there he was, in black and white images that were caught on a clockwork camera, brought to our sitting room, brought even to the postal district of SW16. Surely, I thought, it is a wild world out there, a world in which wonderful things exist, but one in which you can't take anything for granted. All is not as it should be in this world. I knew that after the search for the Indri. I knew then that it was not possible to love the wild world without knowing pain. Though Attenborough found his Indri, I knew that it might just as easily have come out the other way. Almost, I could see him on television apologising for the fact that he had been unable to find an Indri, that there weren't enough Indris to find. And this would not have been an admission of the failure of the human ability to find things. It would have been an admission of the failure of the human ability to keep things, to look after things. I knew that if I chose to continue loving wildlife, I would be choosing a way in which sadness was unavoidable. And I embraced it willingly. Everything in our society tries to push us away from the wild world, away from everything that is not human. To say that something or somebody is inhuman is the most terrible thing that we can say. There is literally no worse word. And yet, a Labrador puppy is inhuman. A kitten playing with a ball of wool is inhuman. The horse that the Queen rides is inhuman. Everything that grows in your garden is inhuman. The butterflies in your buddleia and the blackbirds singing down from the chimney pots, they're inhuman. We call Hitler and Pol Pot inhuman and shudder, and yet at the same time our hearts and minds go out to seek life beyond our own species. We humans have a taste for inhumanity. More than that, a deep and heartfelt need. Edward O. Wilson, great scientist, great writer, coined the term biophilia. It's about the human need for non-human life, for life beyond our own species. If you've ever patted a dog or smelled a rose, then you'll know that there is no further need for me to try and define this term. Such things, when we find them, are more than love. They are a completion, but then perhaps completion is the highest form of love. And yet, as we move towards adulthood, so many things try and force us away from these important questions. I know I felt it myself. I kept away from the stuff. People say, keep away from that stuff. That way madness lies. It may have made you happy as a child, it may have completed you back then, but if you want to be an adult, it has to be time, by easy stages, to let these things slide, to move beyond them, and thereby become a proper grown-up. But of course, the priority of those troublesome years of late adolescence and early adulthood are all about the search for a sustainable part to play. And it takes all your energy to do such things. If you get too swept up in it, the injury becomes a little more than a pleasant, fading memory. I could perform a creditable imitation of David Attenborough explaining the ecology of a cave full of batshit in Borneo. But I was losing my intimate connection with injuries and the other creatures that had haunted my boyhood. Creatures like the avocet, the bird that had gone extinct in Britain and had somehow magically come back. This was the bird above all that had haunted my boyhood. There were a few weeks in late adolescence when I listened to the dawn chorus every single day. That was the summer term of 1971, and of course I didn't get up for it, I stayed up for it. So night after night we would pull back the curtains and fill the room with sudden dramatic light and birdsong and compare the music unfavourably with the saxophone solo of Captain Beefheart. Birdsong was devastation, calling our small world to order, telling us to go to bed now if we had any ambition at all of getting up in time for lunch. Ian Durer's names the great trinity, or should that be quartet, of important matters of those years. Though in retrospect, I think it was only the first that I actually enjoyed, but in the name of companionship and the adolescent's eternal search for companionship and meaning and identity, I went along with the other three, at least to an extent. These adolescent years are traditionally nature deprived. The most offer an adolescent a chance of a week in the most beautiful place on earth and half an hour in the bus shelter with your mates, and the bus shelter's going to win every time. So hence this quite inadvertent study of birdsong. And how strange it seems to me now that I couldn't identify a single song from those rich chords that came across that garden. It's this room that was talked about by Bob Dylan, as a matter of fact. He said, "With hardened hearts through the heat and cold, we never thought we could ever get old. We thought we could sit forever in fun, but our chances really were 1,000,000 to 1. And so it was that I left that room behind and went out into the cruel world and tried to find a way of earning a living. And I spent 4 years on local newspapers, and after that I moved to Asia, where I lived the life of a gonzo journalist for another 4 years. And it was all very splendid, and I still had moments of quite appalling nostalgia. Not for boyhood, but for injuries, for inhumanity. What would it be like to get me back there? Well, as it transpired, all that it took was a couple of aeroplane tickets, a beautiful girl, and a missed aeroplane. I'm going to read you a chunk from How to Be a Bad Birdwatcher. When I lived in Hong Kong, I fancied myself as a bit of a wheeler dealer like everybody else in the town in those days. I was asked to write a series of travel pieces for an in-flight magazine and was offered a decent sum of money for doing so. Not good enough, I said. I would do it in exchange for 2 return tickets to Sri Lanka to be donated by the airline I was writing for. After a brief arguing, they agreed, so I wrote 9 city portraits. The striking contrast of ancient and modern at this busy hub of Asia's teeming. 2 tickets, and the second I gave to a girl called Cindy, now my wife. We spent 6 weeks on that wonderful island, and we did everything. And it was a great trip, and it had one significant omission. I had not visited any of the wildlife places. I didn't want to go. I resisted. I had a horror of doing it badly, of being disappointed. I had a hunger to see wildlife, but a desperate need not to be caught up in some unsatisfactory experience. In short, I was afraid. It was the last day of our trip. We had a flight to catch that afternoon. But we somehow made an error and we missed the plane, and there wasn't another for a week. And because my ticket was a freebie, it couldn't be transferred to another airline. So we were stranded in Sri Lanka. Now, there are worse things that can happen to a chap, especially when he is accompanied by Send. I knew that I should be back in Hong Kong writing up some of my stories, but we had a plan, and I was intoxicated by its beauty. It was Cindy's plan, a plan that cut through my own nervousness. I was nervous because I wanted quite desperately for things to go well. We were going to devote 7 days to wildlife. And we hired some binoculars, and we set off, and we saw instant wonders. The first part was Galoya, a drowned forest with semi-submerged trees full of heraldic cormorants. We travelled by boat and had a distant glimpse of elephant and absurdly one of water birds. We were doing it properly, and it seemed to me, and we were both enthralled. But that was not my conversion experience. The following day, the place whose name I have forgotten, we found ourselves walking across the mudflats with a guide, following the dried, soup tureen footprints of an elephant. We never caught up with him, though the pursuit was stirring enough. And then, a long way distant, I noticed some birds, rather dainty birds, long-legged wading birds with finished beaks, in an unaccustomed movement, but one that would soon become part of me. I raised my hired binoculars to my eyes and entered heaven. Avocet. I was incapable of speech. The mythical bird of my childhood, the bird that had come back from extinction, the bird that had gone and miraculously returned, the bird that no one was permitted ever to see. There it was, in front of me. A group of about a dozen, gorgeous in their black and white, sweeping their dainty, upcurved bills through the water with a scything action. I felt like the shepherds as they sat on the ground and looked up at the flight of angels. From that moment, I was a bad bird watcher. I have never looked back. So, okay, you've got the wild world back into your life and bully for you, but it's not an entirely comfortable thing. First of all, you find something that people think you're slightly mad, and that's because you make people ever so slightly uneasy. Part of them would like to be, well, perhaps not counting waders on a winter estuary or examining turds for interesting species of diptera, but they would like to be a little bit more in touch with the wild world. And then you find a few odd thoughts stirring in you. The wild world? You mean as opposed to the tame world? Are there really two worlds out there then? Is there one world that's human and another that's not? Or is there only one? Might this not be what philosophers call a false dichotomy? Is there really a vast gulf, an unbridgeable chasm, a light years distant disconnect between the world that humans live in and the world that everything else lives in? It's a hobby. People are comfortable with that. You're a bird spotter, so they'll call you a twitcher even if you're nothing of the kind. Or you're a botanist or a butterfly net, or perhaps you're a mad moth, which is tautology anyway, but we won't go into that. People link this attraction to inhumanity with things like restoring classic cars, or making jam, or fretwork, or researching your family tree. Something harmless enough that stops you, that keeps you going, and is all very well as long as you don't talk about it to non-believers for very long. Now, I have a distant memory of one of those one-paragraph biographies that you find on the dust jacket of books, and they always have a payoff line like, he lives in Greenwich Village with his cats Marianne and Suzanne. But there was a book, and I think it was by Leonard Cohen, of which the payoff after the biography was, he has no hobbies. No more have I had passions instead. I was perhaps aware of this as soon as I saw my adversary, but a few years later, this sense of having no hobbies was to hit me with sudden vocational fervour. And I suspect that many people here tonight have had that same sort of experience. Now, I'm lucky because I'm a writer, and a writer can write about all kinds of things. So a career change is not a completely reckless option as it would be if I was a merchant banker or something. But I was a sports writer, and that is quite a big step from being a nature writer. By this stage, I'd written a couple of books about sport and had just started writing columns about sport for the Times. Anyone with any sense would have stuck with that. But I reckon without the wild world. Or perhaps what I mean is, I reckon without the fact that there isn't a wild world separate from a tame one. We run our planet on the pretense that there is another world, and that it is indeed a bit wild, and that we can visit it from time to time and come back refreshed. But it's not really a part of what we really do during the week, or it's something to do with holidays and weekends. It's when we want to do something, when we want to get away from the real world. So I'm going to read you another chunk from my natural history, and we need a little bit of context first. It was a trip that began in Atlantic City, which is just like Las Vegas, but with the charm and sophistication removed. I watched a thoroughly vicious boxing match, and at the same time I'd gone down with a ferocious fever that entailed changing of wet sheets in the night and things like that. I then, feeling still groggy and still, to be quite honest, still slightly mad, I flew across to San Diego to write about the Super Bowl, and that was all fine. But I was still feeling rather mad, and when on the Saturday before the match between Washington Redskins and Denver Broncos, I took a sea trip, I was ripe for a big experience. And it was, as the outset changed my off-duty life, this sea trip was to change my professional life insofar as the two can be separated. And it was all about a sudden drastic understanding of the wild world as opposed to the tame world insofar as they can be separated. Another bit from my natural history, and this is after the sea trip when I was flying on a plane from San Diego to Los Angeles, looking down over the stretch of ocean where I had this trip and seen these wonders. No group of creatures has come to represent the fragility of the earth as much as the whale. In 1,000 campaigns across the 70s and 80s, the notion of saving the whale was a revelation of the lurking secret immensities of our world and of the human genius for destruction of things still more immense. To view a whale in his might is to see the planet as a thing of perfect fragility. I looked down over the water, pondering such matters. The sea, yes, the domain of the whales. The kingdom of Wales, the principality of Wales, that's more like it. And I found, as not seldom before, that my response to something immense was to try and write it. I wanted to write those whales. After all, I was a writer, was I not? True, I had written over the past fortnight of Holmes and Tyson and Washington Redskins and Denver Broncos, and also of hate and violence and mercy and race and prejudice and its conquest. But now I wanted to write those whales, my whales. Perhaps I wanted to capture them in the only way I could, to harpoon them with my prose, and thereby order the turmoil they had raised in my mind. I wanted to write whales. I wanted to write nature. I wanted to write beasts and birds. I wanted to write wild. I wanted to write my delight. I wanted to tell the world how to savour and to save the great beasts I had seen. It's not that sport was not enough. I love writing about sport, I still do. I've never written much about tactical nuances or transfer sagas. Rather, for me, sport is a window into humanity. For me, all sports writers, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not, their subject is not sport, but humanity. Sport shows us such things as, well, hate and violence and mercy and race and prejudice and its conquest and 1,000 other things as well. The sports writer is uniquely privileged among newspaper journalists because in competition, the athlete can't help but reveal himself. I had and have no wish to give up writing about sport, but it's not enough. Not because sport is not enough, but because humanity is not enough. This is the point at which we begin to yearn for more commitment. We want to do something about it. We want to do something to look after the forgotten part of life, the inhuman life. And we want to do so not out of nobility and self-sacrifice, but because we long for the privilege of involvement. For many, this takes the form of career choice, and I salute everyone here tonight who has been able to take that decision and to act upon it. For others, it's a decision to do a bit more. This might take the form of involvement with a wildlife organisation like this one, as a volunteer, as a donor, as an official. Some dig ditches, some count birds or butterflies, some can fix finances, I wish I could. Some do many more things. Some just join the organisation and pay their subs, and that in itself is a damn good thing. Some are able to give time and money and help in many forms, not entirely from the goodness of their hearts, but because it makes our own life better. And it's a step that many of us take. Once we were involved with wildlife and its conservation, and then there comes a point when we become committed. Now that distinction was made very clear to me by Martina Navratilova, the great tennis player who won 18 Grand Slam tournaments. She also added unprecedented level of preparedness and fitness to tennis for both men and for women. And she was once asked what the difference between herself and the other tennis players was. And she said, well, they're involved, but I'm committed. And we said, well, Martina, could you explain that differently? She said, well, it's like ham and eggs. The chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. And so we become committed. We become pigs. conserving wildlife, it seems to me. The first is because it's our stern and solemn moral duty to do so as stewards of the planet. Not an argument I've ever felt comfortable with. It always seems to imply that the planet's ours and that we can do what we like with it. The second is because it's in our best interests to do so, and that's certainly true. And what bears do in the woods is what we humans have been doing on our own doorstep for the last 2,000 years. This is an argument that is most cogently and beautifully argued by Tony Juniper in his books, What Has Nature Ever Done for Us and What Nature Does for Britain. An essential reading, important books, but they are not complete. They can't be. The argument stumbles when we consider if we were to consider that an aspect of the wild world that isn't simply obviously helpful to humanity. By that argument we say, well, we might as well destroy it then. But the third argument then is the one that has always seemed to me the one that is the clincher. We save the wild world because we really, really want to. We look after the wild world because it's part of us. It is not, after all, something separate, shut up and apart. The wild world and the tame world are one. And if we humans really could live in isolation, the world we created wouldn't be worth living in. And it's the world we are moving towards at breakneck pace. So we seem to be faced with one of those what kind of person you really are sort of questions. Are you a rainforest half-saved person or a rainforest half-destroyed sort of person? You know, I have long since given up being an optimist, and being a pessimist is no fun whatsoever. So what I have attempted to do is just to make sure that I'm fighting on the right side. So there I was in a pub, and I met this bloke. You know how you do. Turned out, as rum coincidence would have it, that we had been to the same junior school. We both had terrible memories of the school's ghastly headmistress back in Streatham in SW16. And his name was John Burton, and he was founder and now former CEO of the World Land Trust. And a few years ago, he asked me if I would like to become a council member. And I said, but I don't suppose you could because it would compromise your objectivity. What objectivity would that be, John? I asked him. And as a result, I have been able to visit a lot of extraordinary projects, conservation projects across the world. And I've met some extraordinary people who run them. But I would like to stress that in the course of writing about conservation elsewhere, I've met as many wonderful projects in this country and wonderful people who run them. So though this next chunk is set in a slightly exotic location, it's not about exotic conservation, it's about conservation, it's about all of it, it's absolutely all of it. So it's the same sort of people who feel walking butterfly transects on Wimbledon Common or counting turns in Northumberland or digging ditches in Suffolk. It's a chunk from my latest book, The Meaning of Birds. Hutan began in the jungles of Borneo as a research project, gathering information about orangutans. But the director of this project, Isabel Lachman and Mark Ankranaz, soon saw that pure research was a luxury that neither the forest nor the orangutans could afford. So they established the Community Conservation Movement based at Kampong Sukao. The research continues, with many of the local people involved. I met a group of them, all with clipboards in their hands, recording the movements of and the behaviour of a mother orang and a baby. These people are trained ethologists, and when they attend international conferences on primatology, they're frequently asked where they got their doctorates. Sukao, they always reply modestly. There are also people involved in forest restoration and tree planting. I met a group of wonderfully feisty ladies deep in the forest getting on with the job. Turns out that women are better at this than men, being more inclined to the task of nurturing. There's also a task force that keeps elephants away from villages and plantations. Chili fencing is effective here. The elephants don't like the pepper juice. And so they use a sort of drain-pipe cannon that makes a nice big bang and usually sends the elephants on their way, enabling humans and elephants to share the same space without squabbling. There's also a squad of forest rangers who patrol the paths and the rivers. Their presence alone is a deterrent to poachers and to illegal loggers. The project acquired rights over a cave full of nesting cave swiftlets. Their nests are used to make bird's nest soup. And the site had been overexploited, the population was dwindling. Under new management, the swiftlets are building up again, and there was a plan to start harvesting the nest sustainably and profitably once the numbers have built back up and the money goes to the community. And should you wish to visit the orangutans, you can organise a trip into the forest to spend some time with them in the same controlled way that you can with the gorillas in Rwanda. And the profits go to the local community. Some project. Good people doing good things in good places. The world is full of them. Isabel, yes, the boat was slipping along the Kinabatangan River. And we were in mellow mood, sated with wonders. What would you do if you had £1 million? Isabel laughed. I would buy an area of forest, I can show it to you, that would link up 2 areas of forest we already own. It's the best land, fronting onto the river. It's essential for wildlife. If we could secure that, well, it would be a dream. A year later, we gave her that £1 million, and she was able to buy the land for Bhutan. Great people, doing great things in great places, financed by a great organisation, supported by great-hearted people who believed that saving a rainforest was a good thing. Good stuff. Now, Sigmund Freud said that humankind has never really got over 3 successive and massive jolts to our self-esteem. The first, he said, was the discovery of Nicholas Copernicus that the Earth was not, in fact, the centre of the universe, that it was just one of a few rocks that go round and round the sun. The second was Charles Darwin's revelation that we humans are not a special creation, that we are a species of ape. Like the Archbishop of Canterbury, we are primates. We are animals all. The third revelation he modestly put down to himself. After Freud's discoveries and speculations, we couldn't even consider ourselves rational animals anymore. But in defiance of the evidence, we continue to work and act and think as if human beings were disconnected from everything else that lives. We have put up a series of ramparts between ourselves and our fellow animals, all of them designed to separate ourselves forever and finally from everything else. Perhaps the ultimate triumph of this kind of philosophy is the scientific assumption that any sort of common ground between humans and non-human animals is non-scientific. Scientists call it anthropomorphism, and it's a deadly sin. To observe that one animal likes, or perish the thought, loves another is sentimental and therefore despicable. But what could be more sentimental than to assume that humans are separate, special, and miraculously blessed? A good many philosophers and scientists have explained that animals can't possibly have emotions. They just don't assume that animals have no traits in common with humans. They insist that they can't. And that seems to me bad science as well as bad philosophy. There aren't things called animals and quite separate things called humans that are only human and non-human animals. I'm a horseman myself, and when I'm dealing with a horse, I don't worry about cogito ergo sum and all that, and it probably makes me a very bad scientist and a very bad philosopher. But I assume when I'm working with a horse that it has moods and emotions and that he's subject to change. And as a result of this bad science and bad philosophy, I have managed to escape serious injury and death. All the barriers that we create between ourselves and with other animals turn out to be frail and porous. Emotion, thoughts, problem solving, tool use, language, culture, understanding of death, awareness of self-consciousness, language, syntax, sport, mercy, magnanimity, individuality, personality, reason, planning, foresight, imagination, insight, moral choice, and on and on and on and on. Jane Goodall reports strange behaviour in chimpanzees that represents something that is not unlike religious awe. A signing gorilla by the name of Coco once tied her handler's shoelaces together and then signed the word chase. Darwin had it right, but we humans have spent nearly 2 centuries trying to avoid as many of Darwin's conclusions as possible. He said the difference in mind between man and the higher animals, great as it is certainly one of degree and not of kind. But instead of going along with this truth, we refuse to contemplate the animal in human beings, just as we refuse to contemplate the person in non-humans. And it's my view that human society would be a good deal better if only we were more like vampire bats. Here is a piece, the last one I shall read, which is from 10 Million Aliens. If human beings were more like vampire bats, the world would be a much happier place. It's altruism I'm talking about here, the free giving of something you need for yourself but are prepared to surrender to another. We humans like to think that it is uniquely human, a real and a moral division between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. Vampire bats contradict this view, and I really do mean altruism. Giving to blood relations doesn't count. It isn't altruism to surrender things for your children, it's just self-interest at the genetic level. The old notion that charity begins at home is a rejection of charity. It's only when you give free, gratis, and for nothing to an unrelated individual that you can claim genuine altruism. And it's the bedrock of the society of vampire bats. Common vampires prefer the blood of mammals, mostly livestock in these modern times, horses and cattle. Their wild prey is tapir, deer, peccaries, and agoutis. They will, on occasions, drink human blood. They're adept on the ground, crawling with agile speed to reach the target and seek out a convenient blood vessel. They use razor-sharp incisors to remove the skin. The resulting wound has been described as something like a golfer's divot. The anticoagulant in their saliva allows the blood to flow, and they lap up the trickling blood like a pussycat with a saucer of milk. And it sounds as if the odds favour the bats, but not so. It's quite common for a vampire to go through a night without a meal. And this is inconvenient, to say the least. A vampire can starve to death in 3 days, and a hunger-weakened bat obviously finds it harder to find food. Blood hunting is a skill that improves over time. Yearling bats will fail 1 night in 3. More experienced animals will fail only 1 night in 10. But failure is a fact of life, even for the best blood hunter. Now, vampires are social creatures. They come back to the same roost at the end of every night. There are some big colonies up to 2,000 animals, but most are much smaller and centre on a core population of females. Some will be related, others not. Females are prone to changing their day roost at some stage in their lives. These are animals that know each other well. And so it happens that a bat who has failed to find blood in a night's flying will beg a meal from a neighbour, from a friend, we would say, if we weren't so frightened of sounding anthropomorphic. The friend will then regurgitate blood and sharing a warm meal. Under this system, females have been known to live for 15 years. Reciprocal altruism is still altruism. Obviously, this is a system that works on a mutual back-scratching basis. Human society depends on a number of small kindnesses that you perform as a matter of course and that you expect to be performed for you in your turn. Small things on which a decent society, a humane society, depends. But it's not just humans who are humane. So that leaves me sitting on a mountain in Armenia, contemplating acres and acres of lovely land, packed with lovely living things, all of which we were eager to safeguard. And I wonder why humans have spent so many centuries, so many millennia, trying to impose the notion that there are two orders of creation, us and everything else. And then I wondered how it can still persist. And then it seemed simple enough. If we accept that there is continuity and connectivity between us and everything else, we'd have to start treating the inhuman world properly. We would have to deal with it in a humane fashion. That would be rather inconvenient. Well, white people were certainly highly unwilling to accept that there was continuity, that there is continuity between their own race and other races, because if they did, they'd have to adjust their behaviour and cease to indulge in helpful and profitable activities like slavery and genocide. We have moved on from that, perhaps, but we still think that there is a difference between the wild world and our own. We still think that there are humans on the one hand and animals on the other, and that we can do what we like with anything that is not human. The entire history of human culture has been a crazed attempt to demonstrate that we humans are not just unusual animals, but a completely separate order of being. Sure, humans can do some things that animals can't, like make atom bombs and the B minor mass. But surely it's time to accept the truth that we are linked irrefragably and ineluctably with the rest of the planet and everything else that lives upon it. And then